Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Lost Gaming. So as you can tell, a little bit's changed since the last time. I've got some new background music for my homepage, and I'll explain that once we get into the game a little bit, but I did a little bit of off-camera grinding so that we can move forward without any real complications. So let's log back in, and I'll give you guys a quick rundown of what happened. Alright, so the first thing you'll notice is I've bumped up a few levels. And I've got some much better equipment. Just do a couple of dungeons, data drain everything that you can, and then just go to town trading. It's a really easy way to get you powered up and get you some items and weapons that you really need to stay safe in the game, because it gets very unforgiving later on. As you can see, I took Black Rose with me, so she's leveled up as well, got her some better equipment.
Okay.
One thing though that happened quite a bit while I was off camera, every time you data drain there is a chance that you will get one of these items, a Ryu book. When you open them, it gives you some stats about the game. Just different books have different things. But as you open them, every so often as you complete certain objectives within the book, you get something from the book. Sometimes it's background, sometimes it's movies, sometimes it's music, it just all depends. And it'll go red once you've reached the limit for a certain thing. Alright, so with that out of the way, let's make some progress in the game, and let's check out one of the keywords in our word list. So we know this one is protected. This is the one where Aura was. This was a Goblin challenge. We'll get to that later, but let's first go to Discovered Primitive Touchstone and check out this beginner level. So as you can see, this one's got a lot of monster portals in it. And one of the things that you want to do in every field, no matter what, as aggravating as it will be, is clear all of them. If you don't, you run the risk of not being able to get some stuff that you need from the Ryu books. But if you've done like I did and do some trading, get you a little bit powered up, you should be fine. So let's throw this in here. I know it's too high a level for him to do anything with.
Did you lose?
But I want to...
Let's see. Just with the web go to income. Till next.
And with that, you get the weapon back, and a golden axe, and a silver axe. Which is what you want to do most of the time, because golden axes and silver axes are some rare items that don't really help you stats-wise, but are very good to keep for trading, because there are certain NPCs in the game who will only trade you items for a golden axe and a silver axe. So building up as many of those as you can, as early as you can, is a big help. Especially if you're trying to do a 100% run. even though I said it's really important to... And actually, it's really not all that important for you to beat the monsters. It's more important that you open all of the monster portals. So we're just going to run around the field, because none of these are really useful to me. We'll just run around the field, open all the monster portals, and then head into the dungeon. More grunty food. Yeah, not something that's really useful just yet, but once we get to the next server, these will become a lot more useful. And I apologize if this is a little bit boring, but one of the things that the review books track is number of monster portals open and number of fields and dungeons where you've opened them all up. Most of the time, it is not easy to keep track of this, so it's just best for every field you go to, just try to open them all up. Just so that you don't have to try to keep track of it. Another reason to go ahead and do it as early as you can is because there are a lot of story dungeons in the game where you cannot get to the god statues and you can't open every monster portal in the dungeon. It's really annoying if you've spent a lot of time early on and you've gotten maybe a little too overleveled, and then you just can't continue. At least not collecting items and completing the review book like you want. So as you can see, the game does have a good bit of variety in the types of dungeons that you'll enter into. They're not really randomly generated per se, but it's all based on the keyword, and the layouts are static, but are randomized based on the keywords that you use. One thing to note, if you're running low on items, such as health drinks, antidotes, things that you feel like you need to survive, every time you exit and re-enter a room, things like those eggs and bodies that sometimes drop items will respawn. Most of the time what you're looking for from them are particular items, such as, on a fire field you'd be looking for burning oil, things like that. That's because while they are technically an item that raises a stat temporarily, which you really want them for is they are items that are specific to certain NPCs for trade.
Bloody eggs!
And as is the case with a lot of other things in this game, those NPCs that have those trades have unique items that cannot be found anywhere else in the game. So if you're trying to collect every item,
Bloody egg!
it can get very frustrating if you're not taking the time to try to grind out some of this. So it is worth your time to check every one of these that you can, and if you find a room kind of like this one where there's a lot of breakable items, go out, come back in, do it again. If you can stand the tedium, this is a great way to get curative items and the extra items that you need in case you're running low. But it's always worth, whenever you run past one, to just break it open and see what you get. As we saw on the board, this dungeon has 5 floors. If you're just running straight through, if you use the fairy orb, it will make this pretty quick. But if you're trying to take some time and get everything built up like you need for the Ryu books, it's worth just making sure you explore everything. I mean, even beyond that, it's also worth exploring these dungeons just for the extra items, even if you do nothing but sell them in town. The game is pretty heavy on needing things like scrolls and potions, if only for the convenience of they're a lot faster to use than to cast the spells. So it's always worth your time to have some extra money so that you can do that rather than cast spells, just to save yourself a little bit of time and effort where you can. Because there's plenty of other things in this game that will make you grind, if you want to. I meant to note this earlier, but this enemy is listed as having fire tolerance. What that means is if you use a fire spell such as Bot Cruise, it will do 0 damage. However, if you use a water spell such as Brew Cruise, it will hit an elemental weakness and do significantly more damage. not really all that important right now, but it's definitely something to remember. And just keep in the back of your head as you progress through the game and through the series. Because eventually you'll start running into some monsters that have physical attack tolerance or magical attack tolerance. And it's just always good to keep that in mind. Thanks to my good little bit of grinding earlier, as you see, we're kind of a little bit overpowered for this dungeon now, so we're kind of making short work of it, even with me knowingly taking the different branching paths and just clearing out the dungeon. And as you can see, we're not really getting a whole lot of experience from these monsters anymore. The way the leveling system in this game works is it's 1,000 experience points to every level, but as you get stronger, weaker level monsters give you less experience. So it doesn't do you any good to just stick to low level fields and continue grinding. Eventually you hit a level ultimate. Oh, okay, didn't intend to do that, but this is a good segue for just a second. If you take a risky treasure without using a fortune wire, it sets off a trap. This time it was an explosion. And all you get is a fortune wire. Definitely not worth it. And fortunately, fortune wires are very cheap, so it is well worth your time to just go way overboard and buy 60, 70 of them as early as you can, because the items that are in the risky treasure chest are a whole lot more useful. I mean, it can be a strategy if you get into a dungeon and you run out of fortune wires to take the risk to open one so that you can use the fortune wire on another one in the dungeon later. But since they're so cheap, just get as many as you can and just don't even do that. Now, I suppose just another quick little thing to note. In this game, there are only 2 status recovery items. An antidote and a restorative. Now, there are a whole lot of different effects, and an antidote will only recover ones that are physical ailments, such as poison, paralysis, things like that. And restorative does curses, sleeps, confusion, like more magical based status effects. Just something that actually I feel like is a very simplified structure that makes sense and keeps you from having to have just a ton of status recovery items that only fix one status effect. And in a game like this, that's something very important to because you're going to be doing a lot of battling, and it just would be just way too tedious to keep track of all of that. Plus, most of the time, the items that you're allies have are only ones that you've given them. So if you haven't given them any kind of restorative items or potions or anything like that, they might not have any. So most of the time it's going to be up to you to keep track of it. Because, well, right now I might only have Black Rose as a party member. It kind of gets a little out of hand very quickly. There's the sheer number of characters that you will wind up being able to have in a party. I do feel like that's actually a nice touch to a game that is meant to be like an MMO. It does make it sort of build out the world a little bit more and make it feel a little bit more living, especially once you start getting into some of the character-specific quests and dungeon runs. But it also makes it really difficult to try to keep everyone leveled up so that they're useful, and makes outfitting them pretty difficult as well. I'm trying to let Black Rose hit that one because I haven't had a chance to data drain Chicken Hand yet. And somehow I'm doing more damage than she is. It's probably the element of
Bloody egg!
the weapon that I've got that's just boosting me up over. I suppose now is as good a time as any to talk about this too. The virus cores that you get when you data drain an enemy are going to be very useful pretty soon in the game. But one of the things to keep in mind is that the virus cores that you get are dependent upon the size of the monster that you data drain. So this was a small monster, so I got Virus Core A. If you data drain something a little bit bigger, you can get a Virus Core B, and if you run into a large monster, you get Virus Core C. And this changes as you go through servers as well. Once you start unlocking more of the servers, more Virus Cores become possible for you to obtain. Right now, it's not really a big deal. It's not anything that's really all that difficult to keep track of. And as you progress through the game, you'll also get an email that will help you keep track of that information and where you can go to find some of these different virus cores.
Golden egg.
But it is
Golden egg.
definitely something that you are going to have to keep a very close eye on. Well, and this dungeon's definitely gone a little bit longer than I had anticipated, but maybe since we're almost through it, we'll just go ahead and finish out this one, and we'll just continue the trend of these being a little bit longer episodes than I had originally intended them to be. as you can see now, I don't have any more fairy orbs. This means I can't see what the dungeon looks like from the first room. Now I have to actually explore and open up the map as I continue on.
Bloody egg!
Oh, forgot to mention, the eggs that you'll find in the dungeon, such as the bloody eggs and the golden eggs, those are also grunty foods. You definitely want to keep track of those, and every chance you get, pick them up as well. You want to get as much as you can possibly get of those, just to have enough food for once you finally meet the grunties. And there we go, there's what I was talking about. As you data drain, sometimes you get the Ryu books. So now I've got number 4. Eventually you'll get to a point where you'll stop getting Ryu books, but there are a lot of them in the game, and they keep track of lots of different stats and give you some interesting things. But unfortunately you can't really look at them in a dungeon, so we'll take a look at the new one once we get out of here. This was mostly just done so I can show you the difference in speed between a spell and a item. As you can see, it was a lot more trying to think of a good word. It was just a lot faster to use the item than it was to cast a spell. And that's usually the case. Well, and just to kind of show you, as you can see on the infection level, you can see that there's this green tinge starting to grow up around my character. If I start defeating enemies without using data drain, that'll go away and he'll just return to his normal blue state. But if I keep data draining enemies and just continue on doing that, it'll eventually turn yellow, then red, and once it hits 100%, it's game over. No matter how much HP you've got left, no matter what level you're at, if that virus level reaches 100, it's game over. As I mentioned before, it's not such a big deal early on. However, there is a very late series dungeon that I'm not looking forward to doing that really abuses that mechanic and makes it very difficult to get through. And I have to say, it's really about the only dungeon in the entire game that I'm not looking forward to going through. Almost everything we do, I actually enjoy the experience of, but that one is just evil. There's no other way to put it. It will try your patience unlike any other dungeon you will experience in this game. Well, and as you can see, and from our earlier discussion, you can see that this is a great dungeon to get some items for free, because you can just keep running through and rebuild up up your health drinks and antidotes and restoratives. And if you need to get some burning oils, this is a great dungeon to help build that up. Mostly because, while I don't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure that most of the time it's 20 or so items like burning oils that you need to trade for these unique items that you can't get anywhere else in the game. So you need to stock up with as many as you can. Alright, so this is the last room of the dungeon. Once we clear this out, as you can see, all the dungeon portals are open. Let's just go ahead and finish off all these monsters. Be very careful since that was right there. We didn't want it to explode on us again.
What? You wanna...
So let's open up all the treasure chests. Kick all the corpses. And now that it's cleared, make sure you've got you a sprite ocarina so that you can return to the field. Save you a whole lot of time. And then once you're back into the field, it is just a simple matter of gating out. Alright, so before we call this episode to a close, let's just open all the Ryu books and let's see if we've managed to get anything new. So we got a new background music. And that was really about it. So we'll log out. We'll put in return to the desktop. So there's our new background, and here's our new music. As we get some more, if you guys have any particular ones that you like, let me know in the comments and I will change it over to that. In the meantime, thank you for watching and hope you enjoyed.